going to try it. He's found where that line is. He got
lovely stuff. What do you make of this Mercedes car this year, Hinch? Do you think they've got a full handle on it, or is it still just these regulations that they haven't been able to completely lock down on?
Yeah, I think you look even just back as recently as Mexico, FP3, Hamilton's super happy with the car, the balance, the grip, everything. Very few changes. Goes into qualifying, the whole thing's just on its head. It's such a difficult car to get a grasp on. The setup window seems to be very narrow, and I think that's really the big goal for this team right now. And you kind of nailed it earlier in that what Ferrari have done so well is they brought these upgrades. They didn't change the upgrades, they changed the setup of the car to work better with the upgrades. I don't think the setup window on the Mercedes is where they need it to be, and even a small change in track condition and ambient condition and wind, whatever it is, it just throws the car to a quite literally undrivable state. I mean, we don't see guys like that making those kind of mistakes very often. We've seen a lot of that out of that car this year.
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton in Austin putting it in the gravel. Like,
I don't ever remember that happening.
One team that does seem to have a handle on their car, Haas. What a phenomenal run of races they're having.
Yeah, complete contrast basically to the entirety of team history since they entered Formula One. They can develop the car deep into the season. That's complete. And think about that from every single person in the team. That's motivation all the way through the year now. That's such an important thing to have. And both drivers putting it to great use.
Oh, particularly Kevin. I mean, let's look, last few races of his Formula One career. Again, an astonishing run.
He's been so good. It's almost like he's at peace with what's happening. The car's really come into a position that he's enjoying driving it more. He's got more confidence in it. Nico's really always had the better of him on Saturdays. The last few rounds, less so. But it's tough. I mean, they're doing so well. They're looking strong for 6th in the championship, which is 2 spots ahead of their goal for the year. And neither driver is going to be around next year to enjoy the fruits of that, which is really the tragic part.
And this was a team at the start of the season that was predicting they would be slowest of all. Alpine, we talk about turbulent seasons. They've had one. Great couple of race weekends for Pierre Gasly, though. Quali in Austin, sensational. Race fell apart for him, admittedly. But then last weekend, does the business up in the top 10.
I think that was really important that they converted another good qualifying, because if you keep putting it in the top 10 and fading away, that is so dispiriting for the entire team. So nice for Pierre, and they needed that. First time he was in the points since the Dutch Grand Prix.
And Williams, Hinch. We look at that team, we look at what's going on there with Franco, obviously impressing so many. They need a strong end to the season as well, because they're in that fight.
They are. With Alpine having this uptick in performance, you know, both cars have the upgrade as in Mexico, and we saw the points there. That gap came down. Neither Williams driver had a particularly good Mexico City Grand Prix, so now it's down to, I think, 3 points. And we know how much money is at stake every single position in the Constructors' Championship. So there's still 4 rounds left. They've got to get 1 or 2 of those points that are going to be on offer in the bottom half of the top 10.
And 2 of those 4 half the race weekends left are, of course, sprint weekends. This is one of them. Ruth, tell us about sprint strategy, tyre strategy, and how this weekend is going to play out for the teams.
So, because it's a sprint weekend, teams only have 2 hards, 4 mediums, and 6 softs for the whole race weekend, which is actually pretty interesting, because in P1, they've already got to commit whether they want to keep those 2 hard tyres. We're thinking they probably all will, but that hard tyre could be really, really effective, both in the sprint and in Sunday's race, which is expected to be a 2-stopper. But it's Sao Paulo, so it can always rain. It was glorious sunshine, and here you always have to look up, because the cells just pop out of nowhere. And if it rains, it's going to be even more interesting. We've seen great strategies here. Hulkenberg 2012 jumped 2 pit stops by staying out when it was a little bit drizzly. Max Verstappen overtook from P16 all the way to P3 in 16 laps in the last wet race here we had in 2016. No matter what, dry or wet, it is going to be a really interesting race. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Ruth. What role will the weather play? There will be weather.
Well, that's a bold prediction, Buxton.
There's always weather.
Well, I mean, there's weather. There's nice weather. There's poor weather. There's always weather.
Yes, exactly.
You're saying there's always going to be bad weather?
No, I just said there's always going to be weather.
Well, exactly.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's why it was a bold prediction.
Indeed. Have we covered off all the teams? I think we have.
I think so.
Let's take a look at the schedule for the rest of the weekend. Free practice. The only free practice of the weekend comes at 11:15 tomorrow before sprint qualifying at 3:15 local time. Then it is through to sprint Saturday. Your sprint taking place 10:20 local time here on the 2nd of November, with qualifying for the Grand Prix at 2:30 in the afternoon. Then race day, Sunday, 1 p.m. local time for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Right then, chaps. Favorite time of the show for everybody. Predictions time. Bold predictions time. What are you going with?
I'm going with Lando Norris to win for the first time in Brazil and the 2 Ferrari drivers to join him on the podium.
I love that. Hinch?
I agree that I think McLaren's going to have the strongest package here. I do think Oscar is going to get out of this. I call it a slump. It's not like he's been poor,
No.
but I think he's going to be up there with his teammate. But yeah, then it's the Ferraris. And they've been rotating, haven't they? It was Charles in Austin. It was Carlos in Mexico. But I'm going to go Carlos. I think he's flying high. He's got a lot of confidence right now.
Will Max win the sprint?
No.
No.
Bold. So won't win the Grand Prix, hasn't won since Spain, but he's won every sprint. No sprint win for Max.
Don't think so.
Fascinating stuff. Okay. No Max wins at all. Right, that is your lot, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. My thanks to both of you for your insight and your input. Thanks to Ruth Buscombe. As always, it is promising to be an incredible weekend here, as it always is in Interlagos. What role will the new track surface play? What role will the weather play? Join us to find out on a circuit which never disappoints.
It is a mighty venue which can provide a shock from absolutely nowhere.
Welcome to the Sao Paulo Grand Prix.
Good reaction time for Lando Norris. Albon is into the wall, the Haas as well. Fernando Alonso, how brave is he feeling? There's your answer.
An iconic circuit.
What a move, Fernando Alonso! On the last lap, Max Verstappen wins the Sao Paulo Grand Prix.
Formula One has banned fossil fuels, but what are they going to be replaced with? Last week on Tech Talk, Craig and Tina took a close look at the combustion engine. Well, this week we're going to be taking a look at what actually goes into those combustion engines, namely the fuels and the liquids that actually get combusted. And we're going to take a look at the future of Formula One and the new and exciting generation of fuels that are going to be driving the future of this sport. But first, a short view back to the past. Apart from a couple of attempts to run gas turbine cars on kerosene, Formula One cars have always run on petrol. However, they haven't always carried enough fuel on board to get to the end of the race. And in most cases, that was deliberate. Strategic refuelling has been a factor of Formula One on and off for the entire history of the sport. However, it was definitively banned in 2010 and hasn't been with us ever since. And the reasons for that are twofold. First of all, cost. The teams were getting a bit fed up of shipping big refuelling equipment all the way around the world at both a big financial and environmental cost. So that was removed from the sport for that reason alone. However, there were also really substantial safety concerns. When refuelling was reintroduced in Formula One in 1994, teams tried to get big advantages when they came into pit stops and tried to get the fuel into the car as quickly as possible. And the Benetton team found out to their cost what the limitations on that truly were. There's still controversy about what really went on, but when Jos Verstappen came into the pits in his car, fuel sprayed everywhere and the Benetton crew were covered in fire. A similar incident happened for the Jordan team a year later when Eddie Irvine made a stop and his car also ended up engulfed in flame. That made the FIA think twice about refuelling, but it did stay part of the sport for quite a long time. However, the final straw, I guess, really came at Singapore in 2008, where Felipe Massa in the Ferrari came in for a pit stop, and the Italian team got things a little bit wrong, and he ended up driving down the pit lane with the refuelling hose still attached to the car, spraying fuel all over the pit lane and even some of the other cars in the race. And that was kind of the end of refuelling for Formula One. There have been suggestions of bringing it back, but currently teams are only allowed to put fuel in and out of their cars in the garage. They're not allowed to refuel on the pit lane at all anymore, and again, that's for safety reasons. But we could see refuelling come back if there was ever a drive to make the cars even smaller and more nimble. However, there are ways to get around that by making the power units an awful lot more efficient. And we'll come back to that in a little while. One of the questions I'm always asked by Formula One fans and all of you on social media is, what is Formula One fuel actually made of? Surely it's some kind of space-age liquid unobtainium. It's some sort of hyper-rare chemical, some sort of specially brewed mixture of just absolute rocket fuel that's poured into the cars. It's got to be something really impressive and really hard to get hold of. The reality is that it's actually not that at all. It's not even that different to the fuel you put into your road car. In most of Europe, parts of the North Americas, and all over the UK, the fuel we use in our road cars is an E10 fuel. Well, Formula One is an E10 fuel as well. The Formula One fuel is rated between 92 and 102 octane, which is pretty much what you can buy at every petrol pump across Europe and in most of the States as well. And that's the big difference, because Formula One fuel is the same fuel, components at least, arranged slightly more precisely, slightly differently. What do I mean by that? The fuel you put into your road car isn't just a refined form of fossil fuels. It's not just petrol, even though it feels like it when you go to each individual petrol station. There's different additives, different blends, different products that go into making that fuel and making your car work in the most efficient way possible. And that's what those fuel blends are all about. But the difference between a Formula One fuel and a road car fuel, well, I'm going to use cheeseburgers as an example. If you go to a low-end fast food restaurant, maybe a drive-thru, something like that, and order the cheapest cheeseburger, it's going to be a cheeseburger. It might be a bit greasy, it might not be the nicest burger you've ever eaten, but it's a cheeseburger. But if you go to some gourmet burger place, you're going to pay an awful lot more money and get a much bigger and probably much nicer cheeseburger. If you look at the ingredient list, the two burgers will be exactly the same. However, the higher priced burger will be made with more precision, better quality ingredients, and it will be just all round a bit better. It's exactly the same with Formula One fuel. It's made with the same ingredients as your road car fuel, but it is made with higher quality versions of those ingredients. It's made more precisely, and every single fuel is tuned to the individual V6 combustion engine that manufacturer has designed that fuel to work in. And those fuels are a key performance component of the modern Formula One power unit. So the next question that always gets asked is, well, what would happen if you put Formula One fuel into your road car? Well, it would just run. It might not run as smoothly, or it might run just fine, depending on what type of engine your road car has in it. If it's a modern direct injection turbocharged engine like the one I have, it'll run probably quite fine, because the fuel specification is essentially the same as the public fuel standards that you have for the pump fuel on every single forecourt. So the opposite question that then gets asked is, what if you put forecourt fuel, the stuff you put in your road car every day, into a Formula One engine? Well, the Formula One engine will run. It might not give as good performance, and it might not, well, it certainly wouldn't have the reliability it normally has, but it would work for a while at least. And that's the real difference between Formula One fuel and road car fuel. Really, not very much at all. It's the same ingredients, just blended in an altogether different way. And of course, all of that is about to change with Formula One's new technical regulations, which are being introduced in 2026. The new cars come with new power units, but what I'm really excited about isn't the whole world of new aerodynamics to explore or completely new power unit designs. No, it's the fuels. And that's really unusual for me, because I didn't really like chemistry, particularly at school. I was all about physics, and that's the most exciting thing for me normally. But in this case, it's biology and chemistry merged together. What am I on about? The new fuels are groundbreaking. As I said at the start of this show, Formula One is banning fossil fuels. So the question is, what's it replacing it with? Well, the answer is a load of rubbish. And that's not just me talking. The new regulations are, well, if you take a look at them, they are both incredibly detailed, incredibly jargon-filled, and incredibly boring. But what they all mean when you unpick all of the detailed wording and all of the bits and pieces in is that the fuel is got to be made from rubbish. And I'm not just talking any rubbish. This you might recognise if you live in Europe. This is a food waste caddy. Into this you put your leftover slops when you haven't quite finished your dinner, or your kids don't want to eat a particular thing, or it's just gone out of date and you haven't eaten from your fridge efficiently. You drop it in there, it goes off and gets recycled, and you probably forget about it when your local council comes to take it away. Well, what goes into here is food waste, and that food waste can be turned into fuel, and this will be one of the new sources of fuel used in Formula One. The regulations, what all of that jargon say, is that the new fuels must be made from waste product. Now, that can come from food waste, like you put into one of these caddies, different sorts of food waste from around the world. It can come from commercial food waste, such as the leftover chip fat or burger cooking oil from that burger bar we went to earlier in the show. Or it could come from agricultural waste, those leftover bits when harvest is finished that don't really get used for anything. Those can be used to make the fuel as well. Even light industrial waste can be used. Some manufacturers have even convinced the FIA to allow algae, that green stuff that sort of sits on top of stagnant ponds, to be able to be used as a source of the new fuel. And I know at least one of the new Formula One manufacturers is taking a really good hard look at using that as at least one component of their fuel. Now, the regulations are pretty clear. You cannot use any land to grow plants to make the fuel out of if that land works out. And if that works, then great. But usually, the first time, it doesn't. So they're going to have to keep experimenting with different mixtures of the different components to get a fuel that produces what it is they want to do. And as I say, all of these fuels are going to be a blend of multiple different fuel sources, many, many different components, many different parts to make the perfect cocktail to give the power unit the performance it needs. And quite frankly, some manufacturers are probably going to get this a little bit wrong, because you are asking the world's greatest car makers, the world's biggest oil companies, to get rid of fossil fuels and in a really short space of time come up with something that will power 20 Formula One cars around the best circuits in the world in some of the hardest competitive conditions and be reliable, be powerful and put on a great show. That is not an easy challenge. That's not a tiny undertaking. That's something that's really, really exciting. Oh, and you're not allowed to use anything but waste. You're not allowed to make this fuel from anything but rubbish. That, to me, is really, really exciting. And the teams are excited about this. They're really getting into the engineering of it. We know that because when we went and asked a bunch of the teams in the pit lane to explain what they're making their fuels out of, well, they took all of their glasses away, they took all of their cocktail shakers away and refused to tell us anything. It's a closely guarded secret in Formula One because the manufacturers don't want each other to know that, well, there's a great supply of that agricultural waste in Norfolk in England, but the chip fat in Austin, Texas is really, really nice. But the algae in southern Germany, that is really good stuff as well. They're all rushing around trying to find the great sources of these sustainable waste products, mix them into those great fuels and get that performance. But there is a little get-out clause if you do get it wrong. In the first year, if you find that you don't like the fuel you're using, the fuel's going to be homologated for the first year for the 2026 regulations. But at the end of that year, a manufacturer can introduce a new fuel. They can change it, they can change that specification, and they can change direction. So it's all about developing these really exciting new fuels. But what's most exciting about those fuels, it isn't just that they're going to power these cars around the World Championship calendar. It's also that by regulation, these fuels that they're developing will work in your road car with no changes needed. They're drop-in fuels. So the fuel's being developed out of waste, out of rubbish by the Formula One teams, by the power unit manufacturers and by the big oil companies that back them. Well, they're developing a new generation of fuel that will genuinely change the modern world. Next time you go to a petrol pump in 2026, 2027, you might be driving off that forecourt using fuel developed in Formula One and made out of household waste. And that, to me, is not just wonderful, it's mind-boggling. Competitive sport developing something that actually changes the world. It's really, really unusual, and that's why I'm so excited about 2026.
todos vocês, ligadas e ligados conosco, sejam muito bem-vindos. É a 21ª etapa da temporada 2024. O globo terrestre vai passeando e vamos chegando aonde? A nossa casa, a América do Sul, a São Paulo. Linda imagem aérea da Avenida Paulista. Um dos pontos mais marcantes, se não mais marcante da capital. E aí os 4.309 metros. Com os 3 setores em destaque, 1.7.281 foi a volta mais rápida de Lewis Hamilton. Pico de velocidade de 347,4 km por hora, elevação de 42,98 metros. São 15 curvas. E aí os 3 pneus definidos para este final de semana, C3, C4 e C5. Grande a expectativa para este final de semana, que nós temos ainda a disputa de Verstappen e Lando Norris pelo título. Claro, Verstappen com uma grande vantagem, 362 pontos do piloto holandês contra 315 de Lando Norris. Só que neste final de semana mais pontos são distribuídos. É uma McLaren que vai vivendo um grande momento na temporada. Tem a Ferrari chegando muito bem. E aí, como a gente destacou anteriormente, 51 graus a temperatura da pista. Neste temperatura em Interlagos é de 26 graus, umidade relativa do ar de 54%, e aí o vento do sul 2,1 km. Vento é mais baixo porque a gente pode ter para o final de semana inteiro. E aí, como também destacamos, a pista passou, né, por um recapeamento total neste ano de 2024. Como você vê aí, um piso bem mais escuro do que a gente está habituado, e também o diferencial das zebras, né? Diferente das cores verde e amarela, foi adotado o tom de azul em homenagem ao nosso querido Ayrton Senna, 30 anos sem
isso possa ser benéfico para os brasileiros, né? Que eles possam também ganhar espaço na Fórmula 1. E vamos observar os tempos dessa sessão, porque nos Estados Unidos, você se lembra, houve o recato parcial da pista e lá eles baixaram quase 2 segundos. Então vamos ver como é que está o asfalto de Interlagos agora e comparar com a volta do Carlos Sainz de 2023 no treino livre, que foi de 1:11.732. Vamos ver se eles conseguem baixar também essa marca.
Aí você acelerando junto com Oli Berman. Sobe o som, você ouvindo pela primeira vez nesse final de semana o ronco do motor Haas, o ronco do motor Ferrari. Aí passando pelo setor do miolo. Primeiro contato da Haas, primeiro contato de Berman com o circuito paulista. A Haas completando nesse setor 3, aí é pé embaixo. Aí é o tempo do Berman, 1:14.5. Que a gente pôde ver, Molina, ali do lado esquerdo, no final da subida do café, na entrada da reta, né? Um groove, né? Um pequeno ponto ali para justamente drenar melhor a água, porque como tem um pequeno declive naquela curva, em caso de chuva, que há essa expectativa para o final de semana, não só para a Fórmula 1, mas para as demais corridas, para o calendário na temporada que é muito extenso em Interlagos, né? Essa possibilidade da água escoar com mais facilidade e a pista naquele setor não ficar tão escorregadia, Molina.
Exatamente, a chuva é uma constante aqui em São Paulo durante todo o ano, o Campeonato Paulista de Automobilismo, as etapas da Stock Car, da Truck. Então essa drenagem é muito importante, foi dada uma atenção especial para evoluir esse sistema aqui no Brasil e esse grooving também está presente. Agora, apesar da câmera ter essa estabilização, a gente viu a cabeça do Berman movimentando um pouco. Então é muito difícil tirar as ondulações normais de Interlagos por causa do relevo, o relevo original. Então nunca vai ser uma pista absolutamente plana como uma mesa de bilhar. As ondulações são clássicas e elas inserem um problema maior. Olha só como a Ferrari vem batendo no chão, os carros estão saindo com um acerto básico de altura de rolagem, o ride height, bastante pequeno, e os engenheiros têm que tomar cuidado com o desgaste da prancha central, que já levou carros a serem desclassificados.
Aí a leve distracionada, viu como saiu traseiro ali rapidinho o carro do Leclerc. Até aqui a volta mais rápida nesses primeiros 5 minutos de Oscar Piastri, 1:13.4. Vamos juntos com a Ferrari do piloto monegasco.
Ivan.
Prossiga, Mari.
Então o Leclerc gosta muito do...
I feel like a flap adjust.
It's a little bit but maybe you can close a little bit for 6-7.
Okay, you've got Lando at 3. He'll come through before turn 4. Okay, display 5, Max. Let's go to position 6. You've got signs coming through now. Display 5, position 6.
You want to go straight again? Next lap?
Yes, I think we can, Max, yeah. No threats behind.
Alright, we should be live. Thank you everyone for tuning in. and welcome along to the coverage of the Mexican Grand Prix.
Começou a nuvem black Pichal.
Okay, and again, question. Let me know that diff adjust was sufficient, Max. Otherwise, we'll box for a flap adjust. Norris behind.
Yeah, it's still a little bit loose on the rear, but I don't know. I need it for the rest of the.
Well, so we just need to set the flap for turns 4, 6 and 7, Max.
Well, for 4 it's fine. Just 6, 7, maybe can we look at even more, like a little bit?
Okay, we'll go for a double slow here anyway. Double slow. So mode 1. And Fernando coming through as well now. Are you happy with stability in the low speed?
It's a bit tricky on entries.
Signs 2 seconds. Okay, so we're going to come in for a flap adjust, Max. Okay. I'm going to take some flap out for the low speed entry as well. So stroll 2.5. So box. So box. We have B about 8. B about. Engine 13. Engine 1-3 position 9. 1-3 position 9. So currently classification P1 classification P1 Russell 12.1 Russell 12. No threats behind Max. Sectors wise, it's 2.5 tenths in sector 1, 2.5 tenths in sector 2, and 2.5 tenths in sector 3. Good to go.
This doesn't fucking work. I don't want to take the flap out.
Okay, box max. You've got Tsunoda on a push lap.
Oh, just take this diff out. Let me deal with it.
Lawson, 1.5. Left-hand toggle available, turn 1. Let's box, please, Max.
Okay.
So focus on the pit lane entry and stopping on your marks. It'll be a live pit stop. Can we have a pre-start rev check, please? So mode 3, recharge off, and then switch off. Talk 7, please, Max. Okay, this will be 5 laps complete. Tsunoda ahead, sustainable running. His pace 16.3. And Strat 5. Strat 5. That's 7 laps complete, Max. We'll have 7 more, please. max info. Turn 4, try to brake easier, so watch your brake application gradient. Turn 4 a little bit earlier as well, and try to roll a bit more speed at the apex. So this is 10 laps complete. Have 4 more. Strat 7. It's a decent lap. Two more laps. Strat 5, Strat 5, final time lap. And mode 9. Mode 9. Okay, and we'll box this lap, please, Max. either abort, exit. Charge on. Recharge on. And strapped 7. Tsunoda's the first car, Max. He's still at 5.5, so no threat. Tsunoda's still 3.5. And recharge off when ready. And Strat 5, box, Max, box. So it'll be a live pit stop onto the medium. Mode 12, Strat 9, single burnout and Gear 1 launch. Okay, Gasly coming through now, let him through. Okay, so we'll pick up the checkered flag, please, Max. And you've got Hamilton at 2.5. Oh, he's back down. No threats. And Max, for the grid launch, we're looking at plus 15, plus 1.5. Currently plus 9. And that's the checkered flag. Fail 10, fail 10, fail when you can. Two long burnouts, please, Max. That's a right-hand side gear 1. Two long, right-hand side gear 1.